And now, welcome to the Presidents of the Past Climate Change Edition.
Hello. Throughout American history, we have fought in countless wars and conquered countless territory. However, what isn't often discussed is the issue of climate change. Countless efforts have been taken amongst communities and the government to aid and bring awareness to the issue of climate change, including the Non-Proliferation Treaty of 1968 and the more communal actions of the environmental revolution.
Stay tuned, because to attest to this, today we have 3 historical figures to give us the scoop this afternoon. So, today on Presidents of the Past, Climate Change Edition, we will be comparing the activism that has taken place in the United States by executive powers in the community, in the past and present.
I'm here at our beautiful studio in Seattle at Roosevelt High School. My partner Jennifer Jones is here with me today to talk about some important issues. Let's get started because we have a lot to talk about.
Hi, Billy Jones. Let's go. This day and age, there are so many different opinions on any topic imaginable, and with these opinions come different ways to solve a problem. One example of this is the differences between Obama and Trump, and the issue we will be comparing today is climate change. The United States and the world are warming, global sea level is rising, and some types of extreme weather are becoming more frequent and more severe. Climate change is causing decreased air quality and diseases transmitted by insects, food, and water.
To anyone that hears this for the first time, this information may seem shocking. When you hear these facts from many accredited researchers, it is something to believe and acknowledge happened. President Obama reacted to this in the following ways. One small way President Obama addressed climate change was the American Clean Energy and Security Act, which would have set a cap on greenhouse gas emissions. It passed the House but never made it to the Senate floor. Although this did not work, another bill President Obama proposed was the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, which included $90 billion in subsidies for green energy. Despite this bill passing, he faced opposition in Congress, which refused to bring forth climate and energy bills. While president, Americans became more aware and worried about climate change, from 52% in 2010 to 64% in 2016. As well as 65% of Americans believe human activity is the cause of climate change. President Trump denies that humans are contributing to climate change.
With the new president in 2016, the executive views on climate changed greatly. Recently, Trump signs an executive order which curbed the federal government's enforcement of climate regulations by putting American jobs above addressing climate change. This order goes against at least 6 executive orders from the Obama era that were aimed at curbing climate change and regulating carbon emissions. Not everybody likes what Trump did.
These actions are an assault on American values, and they endanger the health, safety, and prosperity of every American.
Says Tom Steyer, president of Next Gen Climate. Many environmental activists say that they already plan to take action against the executive order. One example of this was the March for Science.
March for Science on April 22, 2017 was about the role that science plays in each of our lives and the need to respect and encourage research that gives us insight into the world. Science is beginning to fall into the hands of the frugal government. The March for Science showed that many Americans cared and were not okay with the decision that the current president made, and that they were standing and protesting for what they believe in.
On April 22nd, we march. On April 23rd, the movement begins.
This conversation with all of you doesn't end with April 22nd. It grows and becomes an ongoing dialogue on how we build an enduring movement committed to advancing science and its role in public life.
Diving back into the past, we took a look at one of the first ever historical efforts in helping to conserve and protect the environment. Right here in front of me, the man himself, President Theodore Roosevelt, the creator of the National Park System.
Oh, hello there, miss. I didn't see you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell me, what led to this amazing idea that is still active today?
Well, the early 1900s were a time of exploration and experimentation. The U.S. was making large expanding plans for the future, like the creations like the Panama Canal, but we were also making stricter laws on involving immigration. The point is, the public was beginning to adopt a more open attitude towards new laws. Now, when I was a boy, I was very interested in the environment. I wanted to become a naturalist before my time in office. I spent a lot of time observing how the destruction of the buffalo and the creation of the Transcontinental Railroad was beginning to ruin the environment little by little, so I eventually took action. The railroad purpose was to try and link the United States from east to west. Over the next 7 years, the two companies would race towards each other from California and Nebraska, meeting in Utah in the middle. What people didn't see was while it brought the nation together, it was tearing it apart at the roots. I took the act that President Wilson signed in Congress in 1916 and took it to the next level. Throughout my presidency, I gave aid and protection to over 300 territories in the country through the NPS. Soon enough, the General Authorities Act of 1970 declared that with starting with Yosemite, the system would be protecting territory in every region of the country.
The National Park System shall include any area of land and water now or hereafter administered by the Secretary of the Interior through the National Park Service for park, monument, historic, parkway, recreational, or other purposes.
Although I wasn't in office at the time, I knew I'd prompted that, and that's when I knew I had done something big.
When did you become actively advocating for conservatism in your presidency?
Starting in 1908, I began to bring to the attention to the public that it was possible that the cause of climate change was human-based. This had never been discussed before. All the construction and renovation was starting to alter the way our ecosystems functioned. So a meeting was held in Yosemite Park, and I got together with an author, an advocate for the preservation of the wilderness, John Moore. After a little camping excursion, I began to take executive action in protecting our land. For instance, Congress and I enacted the Antiquities Act, which protected land and formed national monuments.
How is the community active?
Because we were in the progressive era, most people were on board with the reforms. People were advocating for clean water supply and help for the wilderness, but people didn't begin to understand the idea of climate change until much later.
Thank you so much, Teddy. No wonder they call you the conservatism president. See you around.
Despite President Trump's opposition to the EPA, in the time of Nixon, it was a huge hit. Especially with disasters like the Chernobyl accident and the occasional oil spill, the program provided the nation with aid and comfort. Here, the man is, in the flesh, to discuss his motives for creating the Environmental Protection Agency, President Nixon.
Didn't see you there. Hello, thank you for having me.
So, tell us about your time period and what was happening.
Around my presidency, many major events occurred, including the first American landing on the moon and the passing of the 26th Amendment, giving 18-year-olds the right to vote. As the public began to learn more and more, they became more open-minded about climate issues. There were many actions amongst the community to fight climate change. The environmental movement was led and created by the people of the time, and that eventually led to creations like the Clean Air Act. For instance, a best-selling book was being circled around, exposing the harm humans cause to the environment. The book was called Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, and its aftermath was revolutionary. Carson once said in her novel,
"It is our alarming misfortune that so primitive a science has armed itself with the most modern and terrible weapons, and that in turning them against the insects, it has also turned them against the earth."
As the president, I felt as if I had quite a lot of power, especially with the community on my side. To document how I felt about the matter, I personally formed the Documera Project, in which I took photos to show the pollution in Americans' everyday lives. In 1969, scientists even announced that the smog levels were high enough to cause birth defects in newborn children. On an executive level, I created an Environmental Policy Act, which created a Council on Environmental Policies in Congress. This act ensured
for all Americans to have safe, healthful, productive, and aesthetically and culturally pleasing surroundings, attain the widest range of beneficial uses of the environment without degradation to risk health or safety or other undesirable and unintended consequences.
All of these events acted as a launch pad for me, because I had been taking environmental reform action for years, but I hadn't even began my biggest project. To quote myself, "A major goal for the next 10 years for this country must be to restore the cleanliness of the air, the water, the broader problem of population congestion, transportation, and the like."
And how was the EPA formed?
I originally pitched the idea to Congress in form of an act called the Reorganization Plan No. 3 in 1970, which led to ideas that would eventually form the EPA. While attacking harmful pesticides and informing others of the destruction happening under their noses, we formed a goal around the EPA. We believe that as complex as the environment is, we must consider it as one single interrelated system. Officially formed on the 2nd of December in 1970, the EPA identified unknown toxins and pesticides and worked along other systems taking action, such as the NOAA, the Atomic Energy Commission, and the Federal Radiation Council. It was an honor to be a part of and create something so impactful.
Great, thank you,
Our
Nixon.
last president of the past, President John F. Kennedy.
Oh, hey! It's great to be here today. Thanks.
Kennedy, you were in office when the nuclear power ban happened, right?
Indeed, I was. The situation came to a very close call. Knowledge of nuclear power was being bounced between Russia, the US, and Germany before it fell mainly into the hands of the US and the USSR. Tensions arose between us when crisis began in Berlin, and so I gave a speech to the public ensuring the safety of our first priority in America.
So I do want to express my appreciation to you now, and I'm confident in the future you will continue to merit the appreciation of our country as you have in the past.
In order to protect my country from potential danger at the time, I ordered more missiles and nuclear bombs and built fallout shelters just in case. But one day, our nation and Russia eventually came close enough to a nuclear war with the Cuban Missile Crisis. After a 13-day confrontation, we came together and decided that something needed to be done to limit the sales and accessibility to nuclear power. Before the signing of the treaty, I had once declared,
"We will not prematurely or unnecessarily risk the costs of worldwide nuclear war in which even the fruits of victory would be ashes in our mouth."
The Nuclear Test Ban Treaty was signed between myself and the USSR in 1963 and ultimately informed American citizens of the toxin they experience on an everyday basis. Since then, the main focus has been to create safe nuclear power that isn't abused or harmful to any aspect of American life.
How do you think this brought awareness to climate change and environmental destruction?
I think it mainly influenced literature, which is an easy and fast way to reach the people. Not only with Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, but also with Paul Ehrlich's Population Bomb, published in 1968, and Garrett Hardin's The Tragedy of the Commons, also in 1968. When the information conveyed in these books got out to the public, people began to care more about saving the environment, but they also showed more fear. In public schools, we popularized the term duck and cover with a video warning the public of potential bombings. The ban itself showed people that even though these nuclear bombs had the power to protect, they caused enough harm for us to stop the sales. These three factors during my presidency brought awareness to climate change.
Thank you so much for your time, Kennedy.
America, the home of the brave and the land of the free. But in reality, has it ever been? Are we the most patriotic country in the world? The land we walk on and the air we breathe is all thanks to Mother Nature. The life we live and enjoy now was strongly influenced by our presidents of the past: Teddy Roosevelt, Richard Nixon, and John F. Kennedy.
With this generation's circumstances, we hope that both major executive action and community advocation will be taken to conserve and protect our planet. Hence, in the words of author Rachel Carson,
one way to open your eyes is to ask yourself, what if I've never seen this before? And what if I knew I would never see it again?
Yeah, this one right here goes out to all the babies, mamas. Baby mamas. Yeah.